Sky gods. These words should have impact on each of us, perhaps doubly if you have visited the Grand Canyon. The Great Unconformity is an exposed rock formation within the Grand Canyon that seemingly skips 1.5 billion years of geological history, and the layers below rest at what is known as an Angluar Unconformity. A few years ago, in a podcast about the history of the English language, the narrator pointed out that languages can be grouped into families and back to origins by the similarities in root words, to which he used the very specific example, sky gods. So fierce and terrifying to the people were these images in the sky that they became a fundamental part of the DNA. Sky gods? That one stuck with me. The Eye of Horus, also known as the Eye of Ra, is an ancient and revered religious symbol, most commonly associated with Egyptian hieroglyphs and art. One might ask the very prescient question, what could a Grand Canyon and an ancient religious symbol have in common? Chris and I are excited to present the Great Unconformity and the Eye of Horus. Lichtenberg figures are one of my favorite identifiable structures on the Earth. First, because they vary with incredible splendor and spring across the Wisconsin farmlands. And second, because there are so many, and there is one likely to investigate close to home. The Grand Canyon is one of these such structures. Carved deep into the terrain by forces of magnitude so large, scientists, archaeologists, anthropologists, and in particular in this video, geologists, have all been challenged to adequately explain some of the most propounding data found at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. The creation of the Grand Canyon did not happen in a day. Indeed, the area has experienced multiple cataclysms. The current cataclysm date of 13,000 years ago correlates with new DNA evidence showing the native population began in the area about 13,000 years ago. Indeed, the oldest Paleo-Indian artifacts found directly in the Grand Canyon are only dated to 12 or 13,000 years. That's a fact on the park's own website. And researchers have yet to find any large fauna or flora fossils of the previous age in the canyon fossil record itself. While previous epochs created major uplifts in the crust, evident in their angular unconformity, the main crater was carved 13,000 years ago in the event that caused the extinction of the megaflora and fauna. The metamorphosis of the rock in the Great Unconformity is signature of a plasma event.
This Vishnu schist is a magnificent example of a metamorphic rock. Metamorphic literally means to change form. And the way metamorphic rocks form is they start out as some other type of rock. It can be an igneous rock, a sedimentary rock, or even another type of metamorphic rock. And they're subjected to great heat and pressure.
The idea of encoded knowledge and information is far from a present-day idea. Indeed, if our general culture has lost anything, it is an appreciation for the symbolic meaning in works of art. The Eye of Horus represents an amazing amount of not just esoteric knowledge, but plasma knowledge. One might even say it holds the secrets of the universe. Let's look more closely at the component parts of the Eye of Horus. The 1997 film, Dante's Peak, is an oddly useful movie featuring Pierce Brosnan and Linda Hamilton, in which a brewing volcanic event in the fictional town of Dante's Peak had turned a local hot spring into a hot acid bath, cooking a young couple that had come to enjoy the day. This highly acidic spring would have been the state of the Yellowstone supervolcano's entire aquifer system during the event, a big hot mess of super battery acid. Tapping this power is what the tear duct of the Eye of Horus represents, a connection to the main positive wet cathode of the Yellowstone supervolcano. Indeed, the tear duct itself is actually made up of the Eastern Snake River Plain aquifer. I giggled a little bit when I saw that. This manifestation, in turn, formed a yin pattern in the terrain, clearly visible to the casual observer even today. The eye of the tiger, symbolically expressed here, is the eye of Horus. The tear duct was the conduit of electricity to the iris within the eye of Horus, which formed Sacagawea Peak as an anode for the power. And like all good plasma globes, this anode would have been a connection with the Earth's core below, and the charged particles in the massive plasma clouds above, which were positively charged. That positively charged cloud would have looked for an appropriate grounding, and limestone, incidentally, is an excellent alkaline agent with the ability to neutralize or partially neutralize strong acids, like Yellowstone. The expression of these two forces on the landscape can now be seen as the anode serpent and the cathode tiger. What we are looking at are the two necessary parts of a battery to power our event, the positive and negative anode and cathode. Here we can see the clear boundary zone between the two. Yin and yang, incidentally, are now and forever etched into the landscape of North America. That is a fact esotericists should ponder for just a moment. The cupping of the Bighorn Basin and the Yellowstone supervolcano by the yin and yang is not an accident and should now make significantly more sense. It is your main battery pack, supplied by the supervolcano system, a likely remnant of a past cataclysm, and the Ogallala Aquifer through the Black Hills Helmhotz Coils. For those who have studied the yin and yang, the eye of the tiger and the eye of the dragon represent the connection through the plasma-charged clouds between these two parts. The connection was very similar to a galvanic battery, which strips an electron from the anode side. In the vortex leading to the Grand Canyon, a stream of electrons was stripped from the limestone in the canyon, turning it red through oxidization like rust. The limestone wasn't laid down over millions of years in red. It was white, like all other limestone. It oxidized, and by giving up an electron in the event, its color was changed. This drawing up of these electrons pulled the surface below and created the dome structure beneath the Grand Canyon. The serpent's tongue then represents the focal sputtering that carved the Grand Canyon, moving west along the bow of the yang structure. With the electric eye now fully charged, two additional and predictable component parts, the northern magnetic field and the southern magnetic field, in proportion, manifested at 90-degree angles to the iris anode. With the power station east of the eye, the negative ion trail of the iris formed a perpendicular negative sheath along the northern edge of the now continental west coast, heading south, forming the serpentine shape in the ground, and finishing at an anode just north of Bakersfield. This is the formation of the eyebrow. Let's finish by examining the serpent. There are actually two. Uraeus is the formal name of the serpent in Egyptian culture. Today we recognize a distant fractal truth colloquially as the evil eye we give someone. Its energy is a real thing. Uraeus is actually connected through that eyebrow. At the northern end, the tongue discharged and carved the coast from Washington State north, while the tail connected to the anode just north of Bakersfield, and probably rattled the earth with quakes. This was the cobra motif. The building of the Serpent Mound is an anomaly to be explored elsewhere. The goal here is to understand the form seen in the sky, which was then molded into the countryside, and the evidence the witnesses left. As noted by petroglyph researcher Dr. Anthony Peratt, etchings represented forms literally seen in the sky and probably on the ground, and then carved into rock. What the Serpent Mound and the egg represent is the eating of a plasma discharge, which ran down the snake to the ground, or rather the tail, symbolically represented descending by the circles grounding the charge. There's a tail out there if anybody cares to look around. The serpent then also represents the final connection back to the battery from the anode, and the completion of the circuit. The serpent eats the charge. Similarly, the feathered serpent was a prominent supernatural entity or deity found in many Mesoamerican religions. It was called Quetzalcoatl amongst the Aztecs. In an electric universe model, the serpent's tongue bites and eats up the incoming charge. This was replicated around the world and explains the dragon archetype globally, as these would have been seen in the sky worldwide, leaving a mark in the terrain globally. Here, the serpent eats the charge in Vancouver. And here, the serpent eats the charge just south of the Serpent Mound in Ohio. And the serpent is eating the charge in South America. The serpent was very busy in South America. Hungry serpents in South America. It's like the near impact zone in the Eurasian Plateau. Once you have seen it, you can't unsee it. It just finally makes sense. These were fundamental forces of nature, woven as myth, carved into our planet, indelibly etched into our DNA. Immense thank you to Andy Hall's foundational work and Chris Monk-Seeley's immense contribution in theory. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let us know what you think. Peace.